Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. And this podcast here was created for you so that you can connect to the information and inspiration that you need every single week and feel supported. Because as we know, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, and a yoga teacher can be tricky to navigate at times. We have seen that. If you are listening in real time, we have seen that happen over the last few weeks together. And I want you to know that I've been thinking about you a lot. I've been talking with lots of yoga teachers in our community, and I really think that today's episode is applicable in all times, and I'm excited to kind of share my takeaways at the end of today's episode for how I feel like it's applicable if you're listening in real time when we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's guest on the podcast is a repeat guest. You may remember Mado Hesselink from episode 91, where she shared her experience of having 100 conversations with yoga teachers to find out more about their challenges. You can have a listen to that episode if you haven't already. The link for that is in the show notes. I am super excited to have Mado back on the show today to talk to us about filling our yoga workshops. This may be something that you've struggled with in the past. Maybe you've been hesitant to put on a yoga workshop because you're worried about how to fill it. Or maybe you've been dreaming and excited to share a workshop. Mado has a lot of insights about this, and she shares it all with us in today's episode. You'll also hear Mado reference an episode that I recently did about planning your yoga workshop. That's episode 140, and that link will also be in our show notes. Today, Mado covers how to know when we're ready to teach a workshop, how to fill those workshops, the 4 categories of workshops. This is really cool. And also, how can we know that people are going to sign up for our workshop? Mado's really good at that. And if you're listening to this episode in real time and you think, wait a second, can I host a workshop? Everyone is now meeting online. Everything has been canceled. I think it's really great to look at anything that we could offer in person. How can we also offer that online? So I've seen lots of yoga teachers in the last few weeks get their yoga classes online. I saw a retreat offering today. I'm waiting to see workshops, trainings, retreats, and I think we need to really switch our mindset in this time. Instead of thinking, can I offer this online? To switching to how can I offer this online? So giving some thought today as you listen to Mado and I chatting, and we chatted before anything coronavirus, but listening with new ears to this information about how could I, or is it a good time, or is it a good fit for me to offer a workshop online? Now, if you're listening after COVID-19 has gone and passed, I'm already dreaming of those days. If you're listening then, you get to decide. Do you want to do it in person or online? We have show notes ready for you if you are on the go. Maybe you've taken a walk around your block today or around your house. Maybe you're cleaning. We're not going very far these days, but if you are busy doing other things, all of the show notes are ready for you at theconnectedyogateacher.com/162. And this actually makes me super curious. I'm curious to know, what were your habits before when you were listening to the podcast? And what is it like now? Now that our schedules have changed, our commutes have changed, when are you listening to the podcast and what are you doing? If you want to reach out, tag me in a social media post. Instagram's a great place to do that. And tell me what it is that you're doing while you're listening to the podcast. I want to give a shout out to 2 listeners today who really made my day by leaving a review a while back. Nicola from the United Kingdom says, "Hi Shannon, thank you so much for this podcast. I love listening when I'm running, walking the dogs, or waiting for the kids to come out from school. I'm a yoga teacher in the UK and find the wide range of topics that you cover to be supportive, inspiring, and hugely helpful. I most recently listened to episode 140 on planning workshops." How coincidental, Nicola, because that's what we're talking about today. This came at the perfect time for me as I'm beginning to host more workshops, courses, and the way you explained how to go about going through the different steps was really clear and super helpful. What you said about starting with the exact experience you want people to walk away with helped to make things clear for me. So thank you. Keep on doing what you're doing. Hey, Nicola, thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that you keep doing what you're doing. I'm so curious to hear, are you offering workshops now? I know that people in the UK are staying in a lot more than we are here in Canada at this time. So reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Also, a fellow Canadian, Vicky, left a review saying, wow, where to start? This podcast has been such a great help as a new yoga teacher and is oh so interesting. Every single topic that I could think of is covered by Shannon, who does a fantastic job with the interviews. Very grateful for it all and for the connected yoga teacher community as well. Thank you so much, Vicky. It is super that you are part of the connected yoga teacher community. Thank you for taking the time to leave this review. I also want to take this time to really thank our sponsor, Schedulicity, because they have listened to small business owners, us yoga teachers, and they have completely made all fees go away until July. So let's hear our hot tip of the week from the amazing rock stars over at Schedulicity.
Hey there, connected yoga teachers. This is Caitlin with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Try out Schedulicity's waitlisting if your workshops are filling up. When someone tries to book space online for a workshop that's full, they'll be invited to join the waitlist. You'll see them in the order in which they join, so you can easily work on a first-come, first-served basis. If you have a cancellation, you can pull your waitlist clients into your workshop and they'll automatically be sent a notification telling them that they made the cut. Keep your workshops full without keeping your roster on your mind.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. Now let's dive in and meet Mado. Mado is not a stranger to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, but if you are new here and you haven't met her yet, here's a short introduction. Mado has been teaching yoga since 2005 and training yoga teachers since 2010. She is the creator of Yoga Teacher Resource, created to fill the gaps between what is taught in your yoga teacher training and what it takes to be a successful and effective teacher. Mado is also a podcast host of the Yoga Teacher Resource podcast, where she talks about the places where business principles and yoga principles overlap in order to help yoga teachers make a bigger impact with their teaching. One thing you might not know is that Mado and I are also in a peer mastermind together. It's Mado and I and the two Amandas, Amanda Kingsmith and Amanda McKinney. And we get together quite often on Voxer and chat about the challenges in our businesses, the wins in our businesses, and we also have some Zoom calls every once in a while. And these people make a big difference. It is so nice to feel supported. So it was super exciting to interview Mado, and I'm really glad that you get to have a listen. Let's hear what Mado has to say about filling our yoga workshops. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Mado. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you, Shannon. It's such a treat.
I am excited that we get to talk about workshops today with our listeners. So we've already had you on the podcast. I don't even want to go into the intro. If people want to go back and listen to your previous episode, they can, and all the work and the research that you did there. But today, let's first dive into why would yoga teachers even want to teach workshops?
Great question, Shannon. I think the first and most compelling reason is just how rewarding it is, because we as yoga teachers tend to get really excited about our topics, and sometimes we get a little overexcited and we share too much in class. Now, the cool thing about workshops is that you get to go deeper into the things that you're most passionate about, and you have this audience of people who have signed up specifically to listen to you share about that topic. And so it's just really fun. And it's can be a little bit of an antidote for yoga teachers who feel a little burnt out or tired of the hustle and the grind of teaching all of these drop-in classes where you never know who's going to be there. This is this more dedicated and more engaged audience that shows up for workshops.
Okay, that's amazing. So I totally get what you mean in that I've been teaching in a class and I think, oh my gosh, like stop talking. It's too much. It's too much information, information overload in that class time. So that's when we know, okay, this would be fun to teach a workshop. Are there other reasons why we would also teach workshops?
Definitely. I think the next reason that most people think of is it can be a lot more financially lucrative than those drop in classes. If you plan right, if you do all the research and you hit on a topic that really resonates with the people that you're trying to teach, it can end up being a lot more per hour. Shannon, you actually just talked about this in the episode that you released just 2 days ago from when we're recording this about workshops, about how you have the same workshop that you teach over and over. And when you do that, then all that planning time that you've put into that workshop, it gets recycled and the value of that planning time starts to build exponentially over time.
Right. This is so true. I know that I'm about to teach a 2-day training, which could be viewed kind of as a workshop as well. I mean, that's a lot longer, but it's the same thing. Like I already know the outline, I always make little tweaks. I have my handouts or my booklets or whatever. And you're right, like the return on investment is way better over and over.
The other thing is that depending on how you market the workshop, the perceived value can be a lot higher than a class that's a little bit more general and not marketed to a specific audience. When you market a workshop to a specific audience, if it meets a really big need that they have or a really strong desire that they have, then they'll be willing to pay more to attend that.
Can you think of an example of a workshop like that? Because I've
Absolutely.
also, on the flip side of it, I've been to a workshop that just really felt like a longer yoga class. That didn't feel valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So imagine that you have debilitating back pain and then you see that there's a yoga workshop with a teacher that you really respect who is offering to teach you how to manage that back pain through yoga. That would be a pretty valuable offering to a
Right.
specific population.
Right. Okay. That's such a good example.
And to piggyback on an example that you used in your episode, what if you have a really strong desire to learn a handstand? And every time it's taught in class, it's just kind of like, oh, if you have handstand in your practice, do it now. But then if you don't have handstand in your practice, there's nothing offered to you. Well, if you have kind of built up over time this big desire to be one of those people who's working on the handstand in that class, then you might be really drawn to a class that offers to break it down for you step by step.
Okay. That's a great example. Thank you for that. So we're diving in a little bit deeper. That's the one reason. The second is to earn more money teaching yoga, which we all can do as yoga teachers. Any other reasons?
Well, another reason is to deepen your connection with the very people who are the most passionate students. So, kind of the most dedicated students. When you offer a workshop, then you are culling out like the real the people who are really just kind of dipping in and out of classes, and you're attracting the people who are more motivated, who are willing to commit to something outside of their regular routine. Also, a lot of times when you teach a workshop, you can collect email addresses and then continue that relationship with those more dedicated students who have shown their willingness to invest and might be willing to then attend, let's say, a retreat or an even bigger offering. So, in my mind, offering workshops is a important piece, not essential for everyone, but definitely worth considering if you're trying to build a following.
Okay, that's great. I like this idea that people get a little more time and we sort of see who are the people that are really drawn to us, like our super fans out there. And the other thing I see that happening in workshops is that people also have a little more time to form connections with each other. So it sort of strengthens this whole community aspect. That's amazing. How do we know if like how do yoga teachers know if they're ready to lead a workshop?
Well, I think they know they're ready to lead a workshop if they can think of at least 5 students off the top of their head that would be excited for their topic and benefit from their topic. At least at first, most of the people who come to our workshops are going to be people we already know. So if you can't think of 5 people off the top of your head that you would personally invite to your workshop, then you might not be ready to teach it. I don't think that you need necessarily a specific qualification or a specific amount of time teaching, because even brand new beginner teachers have things that they're passionate about. And you've been through teacher training, so you have more training than your students. So I don't want people to think, oh, I've only been teaching 2 months, I can't teach a workshop yet. No, teaching a workshop, it's a different skill set from teaching a class, but I don't think that teaching a class is a prerequisite. Like, you don't have to be comfortable in class settings. What you might find is you're better at workshop settings.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So it's not our experience. It's really, are there some people, like, for example, maybe someone is coming up at the end of class and saying, oh, I wish I was better at handstand, or, oh, I really have this debilitating back pain. And we hear that repetitively and we think, let's put this workshop together for this group.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important to be qualified for whatever topic you choose. So if it is back pain, maybe you have managed your own back pain through yoga and you can share that with your students. That's fine. But sometimes we get an idea in our head that's a little bit more removed from reality. And we're like, oh, it would be a good idea. I'm interested in this topic. And so I would say, yes, you can definitely learn more about a topic by teaching about it, but I would explore it first before deciding to teach a workshop on it. And like you said, sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole of research when you decide to teach a workshop on something. So I would definitely recommend that whatever the topic is, that there's a level of lived experience that you've had with the topic, and that you don't just think it's a good idea to teach it.
Right. So I know that you have taught lots of workshops and you work with yoga teachers who do. Are there some kinds of workshops that you think, oh, these do really well?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've separated out into 4 categories of the types of workshops that I think tend to do well, but not every type is going to do well in every market. So for each of these types, you're going to still want to do your research on the specific workshop.
Okay.
The first type is intro workshops, and these are the best for newer teachers, or one of the best, in that you're really just offering a broad overview of a topic. Now, it might be intro to yoga for people who've never done it. I love it when sometimes studios will offer an intro to yoga workshop, like, to all their brand new members. And I think that's a fantastic way to start learning about how to teach workshops, or to get a steady stream of students into your intro workshop.
Right.
But it could also be intro to pranayama, or intro to handstands. So whatever your topic is, you're only promising, your promise is an overview,
Okay.
to just give people the knowledge to know whether they want to go deeper or not, versus a more in-depth type of workshop, which we'll go into later.
Okay.
The second type of workshop that often does really, really well, for a couple reasons, is the combination of yoga plus other things. And when I say other things, I mean specifically complementary modalities, some of which are movement modalities and some of which are like writing or creative modalities. So you can have yoga plus Reiki, or yoga plus Qigong. These are, some different ways of approaching it. Yoga plus writing. And I think there's 2 reasons that these do well. One is that there are some modalities, like writing, where it's so unembodied that having an embodied practice along with it can be really valuable, because we show up differently when we've had some movement and some sense of being present physically. The other type is about a comfort level. So if you're comfortable with yoga then you can introduce Qigong movement in a way that's not so jarring or alien because you're being soothed by the familiarity of yoga and vice versa. So say maybe you're teaching a yoga plus Qigong workshop at a martial arts studio, it would be the opposite. The Qigong would be familiar. And then you're incorporating yoga in a way that is just a little easier because I don't know if you remember, but being a beginner is hard.
Yes.
It's really uncomfortable. And so it's nice to have ways of soothing the nervous system as you explore the discomfort of being a beginner. So that's the second type of workshop. And the third type is the deep dive. And we think of this is maybe what most people think of when we think of workshops. So one specific topic, deep, as deep as we can in the amount of time we have, and as narrow and as focused as possible. So, and this could be the same topic as an intro workshop, but you're attracting a different client or different audience to it. And so you're able to go deeper with that audience. And the fourth type is tends to be very, very popular, is an experience or celebration. So this is like the candlelight restorative workshop, or the Thanksgiving gratitude workshop, right? The things where it's an invitation to really appreciate embodiment and to practice self-care.
Right. Okay.
So those are the four types. Do you have any to add? Anything that doesn't fit with those?
No, I'm just sitting here thinking, I wonder where mine falls in. Like I do this 4-hour, it's kind of like an introduction. It's an introduction to yoga and pelvic health, but it's also like a yoga plus. And I'm thinking, which one does it really fit into?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes workshops fit into more than one category.
Okay.
And I don't think we need to overanalyze which one it is. But when we think of a workshop, I think it's good to ask ourselves, does this fit into at least one of these categories?
Yeah. Okay.
It's totally fine if it fits into more than one.
I really like this breakdown of 4 things, and we'll make sure to put these in the show notes. So we know why we want to teach workshops. We have established that. We know what kinds of workshops do well. Do you have any tips about how we choose our topic and the title? Like I do feel like we get really stuck on the title. So if we look first at the topic, so if we kind of look at these 4 categories and we think, okay, I have this idea, like how do we flesh that through and see, is this topic actually going to fly?
Yeah. I have 3 qualifications for a topic. One is that you're qualified to teach it. 2 is that you're excited about it. And 3 is that it fulfills a want or need for a specific audience.
Okay, those are great. How do we know if it fills a need? Because oftentimes we're like, I get really excited about this. I'm qualified to do this. And we forget to check in with that third piece, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of ways of different approaches to this. Is really market research, basically. So I have an idea, I have a sense, I know my people, so I know a bit about them and I can guess. Then we need to put that guess to the test. Now, the most effective test is will they plonk down money for it? So, but before we get to that kind of nuclear test, we can put surveys up on our social media. We can grab some of our more dedicated students after class and just chat with them for a little bit. Say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a workshop on this topic. Do you have any questions about the topic? Is this something that you're interested in specifically? What, if I taught this, what would you want to make sure that I cover? Things like that. And for example, that last one is a little bit of a trick question because, so first of all, they might not know enough to know, and they might give you like a really enthusiastic response. But even better is if they actually have specific questions about the topic. Then they're super, super interested.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know. So how do we, and then in terms of picking a title, so often I see yoga teachers wanting to choose a title that like has a Sanskrit word in it that they feel really connected to, or they want to make it really clever. Do you have any tips around picking a title?
Well, I'm a really big fan of keywords. I host the Yoga Teacher Resource Podcast. So it's a very boring name, but it's really easy to find.
Right.
But I think it's fine if you feel like getting creative with your title, then you need to make sure that your subtitle is on point.
Okay.
Best case scenario, you call out your audience and your promise, or at least hint to your promise in that title
Right.
or subtitle.
This is interesting because I teach a yoga for pelvic health workshop. And you're in that, I'm never calling out my audience really. I say it in the description, and always I get asked, is this, I mean, people just assume it's a workshop for women, even though men have pelvic floor and pelvis to look after. So I'd be even more successful probably if I was like yoga for pelvic health workshop for men, or male pelvic health workshop, or female pelvic health workshop.
Yeah, I do think that if you are clear about your audience, calling them out really obviously in a headline, that's going to help them take notice. Oh, that's me. I fall into that category. Or, oh, not for me, but my sister or my cousin or my best friend.
Right. Yeah, like restorative yoga for the stressed out mom. Like,
Sure.
oh, I know who that is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. And how can we fill those workshops? So that's always the question. It's like everyone does the planning first, and then it's time to fill it. How can we make sure it works?
Well, first of all, we can't.
Okay.
Through trial and error, we can get better and better, but there's no guarantee, because we're human and we like to make assumptions. So the more research you do ahead of time, the more likely you are to hit on the right topic, the right title, the right language in your promotional material. But none of that is going to matter if there aren't enough people in your target audience that you actually reach. So the first step is, I said this earlier in the conversation, you want to make sure that you know at least 5 people that you could invite to this. If you don't, it's probably not a good topic. It's probably doesn't have enough, there's probably not enough interest in it. The second is that you need to actually take that step and invite people.
Right.
And if you are a newer teacher and you haven't taught workshops before, it's gonna be people you know. It's gonna be people who are attending your classes. Now, you might get lucky and you might teach at a studio with a culture of attending workshops. So perhaps the studio promotion will work for you, but I wouldn't count on it. I would realize that you are the person who cares the most about filling this workshop, and take proactive steps and invite people.
This is so interesting that you bring this up now, and I want to share what's happening in my own life. So I have this yoga for pelvic health workshop. It always fills in my area, and I don't promote it at all. The yoga studio owner does, and she does an amazing job of it. I shouldn't say I don't promote it at all. I send a reminder out to my list if ever like she's having lower registration. Then I got asked by a yoga studio in Toronto, and it's not filling. And you'd think, well, there's a higher population in Toronto. It's the same workshop, like it's the same wording. And so there is so much to be said about inviting the people. Someone has to be doing it, either the yoga teacher or, like you said, the yoga studio, or someone who's hosting that event. Someone has to be talking it up and promoting it.
Do you think that you also have more name recognition where you are?
I think so. I didn't really think that was a thing up in my area, because a lot of the time when I do that workshop, I see new people, but I think it's referral. So obviously Toronto is about 3 hours away from me. Then I don't know as many people in Toronto.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a good example. I like how you said we can't be sure it's going to work. Like I did message that studio and said, I need to make travel plans. So when is the cutoff if like it's not going to go? So I think it's important to know that that happens to all of us, even if we've been doing it for a long time.
Yes, absolutely. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, okay, well, what if I do all of that and it still doesn't work?
Right.
And the first thing I say is just what you said. Well, it's a rite of passage. Just understand that that happens to everyone. And you then stand at a crossroads of either learning from that experience or letting that experience beat you down and prevent you from trying again. If you want to have a sustainable career as a yoga teacher, then I recommend learning from it. I recommend asking yourself some questions that will help you figure out where the disconnect is. Now,
Okay.
it's possible that you didn't really do the market research, that you could just dig kind of back into that. You can ask yourself, did you choose an audience that's too wide, too broad? People weren't able to recognize themselves in the call to action. Or maybe you chose one that's too narrow. I came up with a kind of a silly example, but imagine that you are teaching a workshop for dental hygienists, but there's only one dental practice in town.
Right. Right. That's a great example.
So you can have too narrow a field, because you have to realize that not every single person who would benefit from your workshop, not every single person who fits into your target audience is going to be able to attend.
Right.
There's lots going on in our lives. So, I would say that if you have the goal of getting 10 people at your workshop, you probably need to be exposed to like 50 or 100 of people in that target market. Because most people won't actually take the time to go there. Most people will hear about it and then get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, our marketing coach friend Amanda is constantly cheering us on to keep sharing. And she does such a great job of being an example of that, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. And it's hard. Like, I just want to call that out, that it is really hard when you're in that. You do feel like you're sharing it everywhere and people are just getting tired of the message. And I don't think that's what's happening. I think people are inundated with invites and promotions and marketing.
Yeah. And what helps me the most from preventing myself from feeling the exhaustion of sharing again and again is to program that sharing all at once. So I sit down and I create a bunch of social media posts and schedule it in my social media scheduler. And I sit down and I write a bunch of emails and I program that into my email account. So then it goes out automatically versus me having to think about, oh my God, I have to share this again, right? It feels to me like I'm sharing it fewer times if I do it that way.
That's such a good tip, to do it automatically. So if yoga teachers don't know, you can do that. Either you can schedule your social media posts on your page or in your groups. So if you have either a page or a group, yeah, that's a great thing. And there are some great scheduling tools as well for Instagram. So we can plan those all out in advance.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that you think is a good tip for yoga teachers in the marketing as well? Like just when I was talking about Facebook versus Instagram, I'm guessing that our yoga teachers are thinking, oh my gosh, which do I choose? Or do I do them all?
Yeah, this is such a good question, and it comes up again and again. And you have to go back to who is this for and where do they spend their time. So I've been having the last conversation that you and I had on your podcast was about my project where I had 100 conversations with yoga teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing a part 2, and I've been narrowed down a little bit more on people who've been teaching just a few years. And I've been asking some slightly different questions. And now obviously I have a podcast. So this is skewing things, because the people who listen to my podcast are generally the ones on my email list. But what I'm learning is that many of the people who I am talking to, so my audience, they do not like social media at all. They do not use social media for fun or leisure or anything. They only use it for work or for, because they feel like they have to promote their stuff. But if they're promoting their stuff on social media, but they're trying to reach other people who are not on social media or not much on social media, it's not going to work. So that was such a huge insight to me. Like, I need to focus on my podcast and on my emails. And I don't need to focus so much on social media because my people are not on there for fun. They're not scrolling through there for their kind of downtime.
Right.
So each of us as teachers and entrepreneurs get to do that same type of research for ourselves and figure out, where are my people hanging out? Are they more likely to see a flyer at the grocery store or an announcement in another person's class? Now, I don't know how things are these days, but when I first started teaching workshops, one of the most effective ways to spread the word was actually to go to other people's classes and, be friends with those people, and they would shout out my workshop in their class. Like, if I would show up, they would be like, "Hey, by the way, Mado has a workshop coming up."
This just happened to me recently. I went to a class totally not for this purpose at all. I went to a restorative class. The teacher then shouted out, like, Shannon teaches a really popular 4-hour workshop. And then those people were actually requesting for me to go to that studio. They said, oh, like, we can't make it to that studio, but could you bring it here? So you're right. That works very well.
So basically, the gist of it, or the long and short of it, is that it's going to depend on your people. And there may be some trial and error to figure out how to reach them best.
Right. I think it's such a fine little dance that we do with this. Someone was telling me the other day, oh, my students were all in class and they were talking, and they're 50 plus and they are not on Facebook. They're actually hanging out on Instagram a lot. And I think before teachers think, oh gosh, I need to switch everything over to that platform, they need to check in. Is it working? Because I know personally, I get more spots filled on Facebook than I do on Instagram in my area. It's just the way it works. I don't know if I'm promoting more there, but I think my people are hanging out more there.
Yeah, I think that is one of the key pieces, no matter what your business is trial and error, and to learn from your mistakes. If it doesn't work, don't give up, learn, figure out what went wrong. And because really, this is what's going to set you apart.
Right.
Your adaptability, your willingness to keep going, and your willingness to learn from what didn't work instead of letting it paralyze you.
This is a great point because this changes. It changes in our little tiny communities. It changes when, like, Instagram or Facebook decides to change the algorithm, or like you said, if you put a flyer up in a grocery store, maybe that changes hands and they're like, nope, there's no more flyers being allowed here. Adaptability is a great tool to use for this, for sure.
Exactly. I mean, what works now is very, very different from what worked when I first started teaching, which was about 15 years ago. And I can't assume that what's working now is going to continue working in the future. What I can do is pay attention to the underlying motivations behind what's working so that I can follow that as the medium changes.
Right. Okay, this is great. Do you have any other tips for those yoga teachers who are like, oh my gosh, I'm scrambling to fill my workshop, or it didn't work and I just want to pack it in and quit? Because that's the other thing that I hear. Teachers think, well, nobody was interested in that. And I think most often it's that people didn't know about it.
Yeah, they didn't know about it, or you didn't choose a topic that they really care about.
Okay.
Sometimes people will tell you that they care about a topic because it sounds good. It sounds like they should care. But how do you know whether or not they actually care? Well, when they plonk money down and they get their butt into the classroom, that's how you know they actually care.
Right.
So topic. And the other one is, did you use words that your target audience understands? So this
Right.
comes back to what you said earlier about using Sanskrit in the title. Does your target audience understand that Sanskrit word? If they don't, it's more likely to turn them off than intrigue them. Now, you might have the rare audience, like your students might be the ones who are just love Sanskrit and love learning about Sanskrit. So if you know that about them, by all means, please keep using Sanskrit. But if your students don't understand the word, when people don't understand things, they tend to just shut down and they don't tend to explore further. What intrigues them, what gets them to explore further is if you touch a deep need or desire that they have and you speak in a way that they feel you're speaking directly to them, like you understand them. That's what gets them to explore further. But if they don't understand the very first thing they see on the flyer, the most likely response is to just keep scrolling.
Right. I'm thinking of the example of the handstand or headstand. If people wanted to figure out how to do that in a class and the title of the workshop is something like advanced asana, if they're newer to yoga or they just don't know Sanskrit, that might mean nothing to them.
Right.
And it's not very specific, like kick your handstand or something.
Well, what I would love is something like handstand for scaredy cats.
Right.
Because it speaks to a deep emotion. So the more that we can speak to people's emotions in our marketing, that's going to make people wake up if they feel afraid of handstands. And it's going to make them know, okay, this is for me. She knows me. Oh my God, how does she know? And if I go to that workshop, I'm going to be held. Right. I'm going to be acknowledged. My experience is going to be valid and taken care of.
Yeah. And I think also there's going to be other people who are afraid as well showing up.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody's going to be there who is a, amazing contortionist handstander person who's going to make me feel like crap, right?
Right. It's not handstands for experts.
With my people.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Anything else that you would want to share with yoga teachers who are feeling like, okay, I really, really need to fill this workshop?
I would, first of all, let go of really needing it and see it as a step along the way. Because when we grasp at things and we get super emotionally attached to one specific topic, that's when, if it doesn't fill, you're going to be devastated. So I would put this one workshop in perspective for you and think of it as an experiment. And a lot of times, if we think of it that way, we actually get braver about trying things. Maybe we get braver about what type of social media posts we put out there. Maybe we get braver about inviting people because it's not so loaded anymore.
Right.
So that's the big thing that I would say is teaching workshops is amazing, but think of it as a long-term game. And, think of your whole teaching career. We get into teaching because we think that yoga is life-changing and valuable, but it's also a lifelong practice. And we want to keep doing this forever. This is a career that we want to be able to do when we're 100. So I would let go of any sense of attachment or desperation around this particular workshop and just look at it like an experiment, like a game, like one in a series of many, and maybe a great story that you can tell in 10 or 15 years.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. I like this, that we let go of that. We have a little more fun with it. It becomes lighter. That's good. I know that you're working hard at putting a course together, which I think will be ready when this episode comes out. Can you tell us a little bit about your course?
Absolutely. So my course is going to take everything that we talked about today And it's going to be a step-by-step guide through this whole process, because I recognize that what we're talking about is a little bit more involved than what most yoga teachers will do. And that's why it works, frankly, because it acknowledges reality of how people actually make decisions, and that sometimes it is a trial and error situation. So it's step by step through how to choose a topic, through all the logistics, through creating a marketing plan, through implementing the marketing plan, designing the workshop, delivering the workshop, and then the follow-up afterwards. And there's just going to be so many guides and worksheets, and every single aspect of planning and delivering a workshop will be just laid out for you so that it's a no-brainer. You don't have to think too much beyond, because it's already so much just to come up with the topic and just to create the plan. So this will allow you to just follow the steps so that you're confident that you're not leaving anything behind, and that you've set up a system that you can repeat again and again.
Okay, that's amazing. I will make sure that we link to it in the show notes. And also, I think you said that you're working on, because I feel like this is how I connected with you. I got on your email list long ago for a big, huge list that you did. And I heard that you were working on one and asked if you would share it with our listeners. So can you tell us about this big list?
Yeah, I'm super excited too. So one of my things that I love is creativity and just generating a whole lot of ideas. The first list that you were talking about is a list of 100 yoga class themes. And the list that I'm offering to anybody who would like it today is a list of 100 yoga workshop ideas. So just to kind of give you a big variety of ways that you could go. Maybe you'll choose one of the workshops on the list, or maybe it'll just get your creativity flowing and you'll come up with another type just by looking at the variety that I've come up with. And if you want to get that, you can just go to teachingyoga.net/100 workshops.
Okay, that's so great. Thank you for offering that. I love those lists. They are very inspiring. Like you said, even if you don't pick something off the list, it usually gets the creative juices going. Anything else that you would tell yoga teachers as they plan their workshop or are sitting there wondering how to get people into it? Anything else that's really that you've learned over the years running your own workshops?
Workshops are the most fun way to teach yoga that I have ever experienced. This is something that we chatted about a little bit in the beginning, but you really get to connect with the most excited students, and you get to reconnect with your own passion for the topic through their excitement. So if you have an inkling that you might want to teach a workshop, I really hope you'll give it a try. And I hope that you'll do at least a little bit of what Shannon and I talked about today to help you get not just people to your workshop, but the right people who are going to be the ones who are going to be engaged and excited and give you lots of awesome feedback so that you can keep repeating the same or different workshops again and again.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mado. It's been great to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Well-connected yoga teachers, I want to hear from you. What were your key takeaways in today's episode? What was one thing that you thought, I listened to that, and now I'm going to take that into the rest of my week, or now I'm going to take that small nugget and use that and go plan a yoga workshop? I really took away these 4 categories of workshops. So the first being intro workshops, where you give an overview of a topic. Number 2, yoga and a complementary modality. Number 3, deep dive, where you really narrow in and focus on a topic even more. And number 4, an experience or celebration. So I am really curious to hear from you, connected yoga teachers. Are you thinking about how you could offer a workshop online? Think about some of the elements that were part of a workshop that you attended. How could you do those online? Or are you planning a workshop in person? Are you looking way ahead on the calendar and having this time where maybe you're inside a little bit more, hanging out a little bit more with family, taking more time off work? Are you able to put plans in place for your next workshop? One key thing that Mado brought up today that I talked about in episode 140 is that when you plan a workshop and then you can repeat it, this is where you really see the fruits of your labor. This is the part where I usually tell you where we can get together in person. At this point, I still am teaching Yoga for Pelvic Health September 19th and 20th in Meaford, Ontario, unless that training needed to move online. We will see. Hopefully, we are back together and gathering in person by September. And for now, I'm meeting one-on-one with yoga teachers online through consultation calls. All of the details are on the connectedyogateacher.com. You can either look under trainings and events or work with me if you'd like to work one-on-one. Connected Yoga Teachers, my email blew up last week, and I wanted to give you the update here in case I don't get back to your email. Amanda McKinney and I did a masterclass, and we talked with yoga teachers for an hour about how to take your yoga online. You can access the replay of that at theconnectedyogateacher.com and look at the top where it says Teach Online Yoga. The replay is there, and also Amanda McKinney has created some amazing downloadable PDFs for you. Today's episode was brought to you by our entire team, Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead. Thank you so much for all of your help. Also, thank you, dear listener. You are the one who reaches out to me every once in a while, who supports other yoga teachers, and who really digs in and shares yoga with your community. You're doing amazing work right now that is so needed in this world. How can I support you? Reach out and leave me a voicemail or send me an email. Tell me what it is that you need help with right now. What are you finding challenges with? What resources do you need to offer something to your community? And I also want to know, in these challenging times, what are you doing to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?